Hi guys, so I welcome you to part 3 of SEBI Annual Report 2017. So in the first two parts we have learned a lot about the different important facts, different important concepts which are covered under the SEBI Annual Report 2017-18. So now let's complete our discussion by completing the remaining topics under the annual report. So let's start with the first topic, which is dematerialization. Now, dematerialization means conversion of securities into electronic format, that is dematerialization of the securities. Now, with regard to dematerialization, most important agencies, they are depositories and depository participants, and we have already learned a lot about the process of dematerialization and the role which is played by the depositories and the depository participants in this regard. Now, the annual report says the depositories do not charge the investors directly, but charge their depository participants, who in turn charge the clients. So this relationship we have already seen many a times, that there are depositories and then there are depository participants and then there are investors. So the investors, they get in touch with the depository participant, and then the depository participant is in touch with the depository. So this is how this chain works. However, as per SEBI directive, depository participants cannot charge investors towards opening of a beneficial ownership account except statutory charges. So whatever legal charges are there, that have to be paid by the investor for opening a demat account, but no other charges have to be paid. So in this regard, this is important to remember that there is a beneficiary owner and a real owner, which is there in context of depositories and dematerialization of securities, and the beneficiary is the investor himself. Beneficiary means the person who is going to get the real benefits out of the investments which are being dematerialized. Over the time, depositories have been reducing their charges along with the growth in volume. So depositories, they have reduced their charges, so depository participants, they have to feel less burden. Now let's move to derivatives segment. So this report has a lot to say about the different trends with regard to the derivatives segment, but here we have just picked out the very important points which are relevant for our examination. So the report says among the three exchanges in the derivative market ecosystem, these are NSE, BSE and MSEI, that is Metropolitan Stock Exchange of India. NSE is the dominant market player in the equity derivatives market. So we have already seen the dominance of NSE in the previous two videos as well. So in this particular segment also, NSE is the dominant market leader. Further, trading in exchange traded currency derivatives was launched in India in August 2008. So it talks about this also, and we have already talked about this particular point in the context of NRIs previously. Presently in Indian markets, the currency derivatives, they are being traded on BSE, NSE and MSEI. NSE launched trading in futures contract on India VAX. India VAX is a volatility index based on Nifty's index option futures. So it says it launched trading in futures contract based on India's volatility in the futures and options segment with regard to February 26, 2014. So it says with regard to this particular volatility index also, there are future contracts which have been launched by NSE. Now next, let's talk about commodity derivatives market. Now with regard to this commodity derivatives market, the report says that MCX Comdex and NCDX Dhanne. So these are two very important terms for us. So it says that these are the two benchmark indices in Indian commodity derivatives market, and they reflect the broad movement in the commodity prices. So this we have to remember, that MCX Comdex and NCDX Dhanne, they are the two benchmark indices. And while MCX Comdex is a composite index of three sub indices, and these are MCX Metal, MCX Energy and MCX Agriculture, NCDX Dhanne, it is represented by 10 agri commodities. So this is the difference between the MCX Comdex and NCDX Dhanne. Now if we talk about the exchange wise share in the commodity derivatives turnover, then most of the share is of the MCX, then is NCDX. So aggregate turnover of all the exchanges in the commodity derivative segment, it says it decreased by 7.3%. So overall we have seen that there have been increase in different sets of turnovers in the securities market space, but here in the commodity derivative segment this has declined. And the lion's share in the all India turnover, it is of MCX, and this is followed by NCDX. Now further, of the aggregate all India turnover in commodity derivatives, and a very important fact is that 87.7% it was contributed by non-agri commodities, and only 12.3% was contributed by agri commodities in 2017-18. So we have to remove this notion from our mind that agri commodities, they are the main commodities which are traded in the commodity derivatives space. If you look at the share of agriculture commodities, it is only 12.3% in 2017-18, and rest you can see they are metal, energy, bullion and precious stone. So this you have to keep in mind that agri commodities share is only 12.3%. Now next, let's move on to foreign portfolio investment. Now the report brings out some very important facts with regard to foreign portfolio investment in India, and it says, based on the country of incorporation in which FPI is incorporated, the number of FPIs registered was the highest from USA. So from USA, more than 3,100 FPIs they are registered in India, followed by Luxembourg, Canada and Mauritius. So on the top there is USA. And in terms of AUC, now AUC means the assets under custody of that foreign portfolio investor. So if we look at in AUC terms, then again FPIs from the USA, they had the maximum AUC. This was followed by Mauritius, Luxembourg and Singapore. Further, it says that overall FPI investments in India, they have grown remarkably in the last 15 years. Now next is SEBI's complaint redress system, that is SCORES. So we have already learnt about this particular system in one of the previous parts also. So the report says that this SCORES platform, it has helped the investors in getting the real-time knowledge of the status of their grievance. Further, it says that during 2017-18, over 32,000 e-complaints they were received on the portal. And it says that with regard to launching of complaints on SCORES portal, the investors, they can launch e-complaints. So the investors, they can launch e-complaints on this SCORES platform, and any physical complaint which is received against any of the entities in the SCORES database, it is also uploaded on the SCORES. So if any investor is submitting physical complaint, then again it will be converted into an e-complaint and it is going to be uploaded on the SCORES platform, and there is going to be similar action as an e-complaint. Further, to facilitate investors, SEBI has also launched toll-free helpline service numbers. And these are the numbers 1800-22 7575 and 1800-266 7575. So you have to remember that SEBI has launched certain toll-free numbers also with regard to investor complaint redressal. So this was about the second part, in which we have talked about and learnt about different sets of trends with regard to securities market. Now let's move to the third part, which is about SEBI functions and regulatory actions. So it talks about the different functions which the SEBI has performed with regard to different segments of the market and the different regulatory actions which have been taken by SEBI. So it talks about the regulation of stock exchanges, regulation of intermediaries, regulating mutual funds, preventing fraudulent and unfair trade practices, investor education, prohibiting insider trading, and in carrying out inspections, inquiries, etc., and certain other stuff. These are being talked about in this particular part. So now let's discuss all the important points from this particular part of the SEBI annual report. So first is regulation of business in stock exchanges and clearing corporations. So stock exchanges, they are granted a recognition for their operations in the securities market by SEBI. So this is something which you all would be aware about, that stock exchanges, they are being given recognition by SEBI. So this was not something I was going to tell you. I wanted to tell you that this recognition is being given under Section 4 of Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956. So this is an important fact, that this recognition is not under SEBI Act, rather this is under SCRA Act 1956. And as on 31st March 2018, there were 4 stock exchanges in India which had permanent recognition. So 4 exchanges, they had permanent recognition, and even out of those 4, 2 were not willing to remain permanent. 2 of these, Ahmedabad Stock Exchange and Calcutta Stock Exchange, they are in the process of exit. So they want to exit from the stock market business. And further, SEBI, in the exercise of the powers which is conferred on it under the Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956, it grants the recognition and renewal of recognition to clearing corporations. So for both stock exchanges and clearing corporations, SEBI is the registration authority, and this registration powers, they are given under SCRA Act. So this is about the stock exchanges with permanent recognition. So here you can see Ahmedabad Stock Exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange, Calcutta, and National Stock Exchange of India. So out of these, BSE and NSE, they are going to remain permanent, and these Ahmedabad and Kolkata, they are under the process of exit. And if you talk about the recognition granted to stock exchange during 2017-18, then they include the Metropolitan Stock Exchange of India Limited, India International Exchange, that is IFSC Limited, and NSE IFSC Limited. So these are the exchanges to which the renewal has been granted during 2017-18. If you talk about the recognitions which are granted to clearing corporations, so clearing corporations, they play a very important role with regard to securities market, and they act as an intermediary which facilitate the settlement of the any particular securities market transaction. Like they are facilitating the delivery of the securities to the person who has bought them, and they will facilitate the payment to the person who has sold the securities. Now, the recognitions which are granted to clearing corporations during the year, they include the recognition to National Securities Clearing Corporation Limited, Metropolitan Clearing Corporation of India Limited, India International Clearing Corporation Limited, NSE IFSC Clearing Corporation Limited. So these were the clearing corporations to which the recognition it was granted. Next is recognition of commodity derivatives exchanges. Now, pursuant to the central government's notification and under the powers conferred by the Finance Act, Securities Contract Regulation Act, that is SCRA 1956, it was amended to include commodity derivatives within the definition of securities. So it says that definition of securities, it was amended, and the SCRA Act, which has this definition of securities act, it was amended to include commodity derivatives in its definition. So the government is now serious about the commodity derivatives space also. And if we talk about the national commodity derivatives exchanges in the country, then they include the Multi Commodity Exchange of India, which is MCX, based in Mumbai, a National Commodity and Derivatives Exchange Limited, that is NCDX, based in Ahmedabad, National Multi Commodity Exchange Limited, NMC, that is Ahmedabad, which is in Ahmedabad, and India Commodity Exchange Limited, it is in Navi Mumbai. So these are the national commodity derivatives exchanges. The major one are the first two, MCX and NCDX. Now next is about registration and regulation of intermediary. So SEBI Annual Report, it talks about the number of registrations which were granted during the year and the total intermediaries which are there at the year end. So it is going to talk about how many stockbrokers they were registered during the year and how many stockbrokers they were there in the end. So this is the information which is not very much relevant for our examination. So we have not included this information. We have just picked out the important points, the important concepts, the important facts which are important for our examination. So these are the intermediaries which are being regulated by SEBI. So they include the stockbrokers, the clearing members, the registrars to issue and share transfer agents, that is RTAs, merchant bankers, underwriters, credit rating agencies, bankers to an issue, debenture trustees, and depository participants. So with regard to all of these, some registrations they were granted and some numbers they were increased. So we are not going into much detail, but we are going to just discuss the important points. So first is about the classification of stock brokers. So this table has been presented in the SEBI Annual Report, and it talks about the classification of stock brokers. So this classification is in different categories. First is proprietorship, then is partnership, then is corporate, and then there are others. So here what I am going to tell you, what I am going to make you aware of is the fact that what is the maximum percentage in which the stock brokers they are registered. So if you talk about proprietorship, they are around 12 to 10%. So this is around the 12% range, and this is more or less same in both the years. And if you talk about the partnership, this is even lower than the proprietorship in many cases. And if you talk about the corporate segment, this is a segment which is the highest proportion. So the number of corporate brokers, they are the highest ones, and even in the different exchanges, NSE has the highest corporate brokers, followed by BSE and MSCI. Now next is about the steps to prevent fraudulent and unfair trade practices. So with regard to this, SEBI has initiated a different set of reform measures, and the first one is SEBI prohibition of fraudulent and unfair trade practices relating to securities market regulations 2003. So these regulations, they are in place with regard to this. Further actions have been initiated in terms of provisions of SEBI Act 1992, which also include adjudication proceedings for levy of monetary penalty, and this also acts as a deterrent. So there are certain actions which are initiated under the provisions of SEBI Act. Next is Fair Market Conduct Committee. So this committee has been set up to review SEBI prohibition of insider trading regulations 2015 and SEBI prohibition of fraudulent and unfair trade practices relating to securities market regulations 2003. So this committee has been constituted, and it is taking a look at different sets of regulations which are there to ensure fair market conduct and preventing unfair trade practices. So these are the steps, these are the measures of SEBI to promote the fair trade practices. Next is investor education and training of intermediaries. Now SEBI is concerned about the investor protection, and with regard to this, SEBI undertook some different sets of measures for investor education and awareness. And the focus was to reach more investors, potential investors, so that they can be made aware about the different risks, different issues associated with the securities market. Now during the year 2017-18, SEBI carried a media campaign which is on SMS hot investment tips. So this media campaign, it was carried out by SEBI, and this campaign, it was undertaken to caution the investors about unsolicited investment advices, investment tips which are received through SMS. So you have not wanted any SMS, still you receive an SMS that you should buy this or this share. So this is unsolicited investment tips which you have received through SMS. So SEBI is trying to caution against this, that this is false, this is just to lure you into promise of unrealistic returns. So investors, you should remain away from such kind of unsolicited investment tips. Next is World Investor Week. Now with the objective of highlighting the initiatives which have been taken by various financial market regulators for promoting investor protection and education awareness activities, IOSCO. So this is an international organization which is International Organization of Securities Commission. So this is the international organization with regard to securities market. So this has been organizing a week-long campaign which is referred to as the World Investor Week, WIW. So this, we have to remember that World Investor Week is organized by this organization IOSCO. Now in order to contribute and celebrate World Investor Week during October 2017, SEBI participated by organizing various financial literacy and investor awareness programs. So SEBI was an active participant in this World Investor Week 2017. Now further, if you talk about the SEBI's association with the IOSCO, then IOSCO board is the governing and standard setting board of the International Organization Securities Commission. So this particular commission has a board which is the governing and the standard setting board of this commission, and even SEBI is a member of this particular board. And the 42nd annual conference of IOSCO, it took place in May 2017 in Jamaica. Further, SEBI is also the chair of IOSCO Policy Committee on Issuer Accounting, Audit and Disclosure and IOSCO Assessment Committee. So more or less SEBI is an active participant with regard to activities of IOSCO. So this we have to remember, that SEBI is closely associated with IOSCO. Next is National Institute of Securities Market. So this is an educational initiative by SEBI. So this is a public trust which has been established in 2006 by Securities and Exchange Board of India. So this institute, it carries out a wide range of capacity building activities at various levels, which is aimed at enhancing the quality standards of and increase the participation in the securities market. So this institution is more or less concerned with the wide range of capacity building activities in the securities market. So this becomes a very important institute about which we must be aware of. Next is surveillance measures. Now during 2016-17, to preempt, that is to protect the misuse of the trading platform of the stock exchanges, it was decided that a certain preventive mechanism was required in order to check the abnormal rise in the prices of certain shares. So there was certain abnormal rise in prices of some shares, and this was more particularly in the case of companies which have poor fundamentals. So this rise in price of the shares of these companies, it was more or less without any logic, because they were not good on fundamentals, their sales were not good, their assets, they were not good. So why the price was rising for these kinds of SIP? So this was something which was troubling for everyone. So that's why the SEBI, it introduced this graded surveillance measure in February 2017. So in this regard, this measure was introduced by SEBI. Further additional surveillance measures, they were put in place for shell companies. So we want to ensure that there should not be any abnormal rise in price of those shares which have poor fundamentals, because it may happen that retail investors or some poor investors, they may get lured into this abnormal price rise and they may get their money trapped in these things. So that's why SEBI introduced this surveillance measure. Next is Asia Pacific Regional Committee, or APRC. So APRC is one of the 4 regional committees which are constituted by IOSCO. So we have already learned about this organization IOSCO and SEBI's association with it. So this has 4 regional committees, and APRC is one of the regional committees, and it focuses on regional issues relating to securities regulation. So it comprises 24 members which represent the securities regulators from the Asia Pacific jurisdictions, and SEBI is also one of the members of this APRC. Now next, let's move on to the part number 4, which is organizational matters. So this is a very simple part, and it just talks about the constitution of SEBI, information technology, audit committee, and certain other miscellaneous stuff. So let's take a quick look about all these points. So first is about SEBI, and this is something I believe we all must be aware of. So let's quickly revise this information. So it says SEBI was constituted on 12th of April 1988 as an interim administrative body under the administrative control of Ministry of Finance. So SEBI was first constituted in 1998, and SEBI was accorded statutory status in January 1992 by passing of an ordinance. So an ordinance was passed and SEBI was accorded the statutory status. And formally SEBI was established on April 12, 1992 in accordance with the provisions of SEBI Act 1992. So finally this SEBI Act, it came into existence with the approval of Parliament, and SEBI was formally established in April 12, 1992. So SEBI constituted on 1988, it became a statutory body in 1992. SEBI's preamble describes its core functions as, so the core functions of SEBI, they are to protect the interest of investors, to promote the development and to regulate the securities market, and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. So SEBI is concerned with protecting investor interest, regulating and developing the securities market. So this is about the SEBI. Now let's talk about the audit committee. So this was in pursuit of the high standards of governance and transparency, and with regard to this, a meeting was held in September 2009 of SEBI, and SEBI board, it constituted an audit committee. So this committee was constituted in SEBI, and this committee was to exercise oversight on SEBI's financial reporting process and disclosure of its financial information. Now SEBI is the organization which is concerned with the different sets of financial information of different listed companies, but there must be some mechanism to ensure that SEBI's own financials, they are properly prepared. It should have proper financial reporting process. So for this purpose, audit committee was constituted, and this committee, it comprises of 3 members which are nominated by the SEBI board, and the tenure of the members of this committee is 2 years. Now the committee reviewed and discussed the SEBI's annual statement of accounts for 2017-18 during the year, and further it suggested some improvement measures with regard to SEBI's internal control systems. So audit committee in SEBI, it is composed of 3 members which are nominated by the board, and it is concerned with making SEBI's internal financial reporting process more resilient. Now next is promotion of official language. So it says that during 2017-18, all the notifications, all the public notices, all the registration certificates which were granted to market participants, intermediaries, etc., they were issued in both English and Hindi. So in both these languages, SEBI issued its notifications, circulars and registration certificates. Further, during the year, a Rajbhasha portal was made live on SEBI's share portal. So this Rajbhasha portal was made live, and this portal is aimed at providing single point of access of all the relevant information pertaining to official language Hindi for the staff members of SEBI. So these are the measures which relate to promotion of official language, that is Hindi. Next is SEBI's Maulik Hindi Pustak Lekhan Yojana. So during the year, with a view to encourage the staff members of SEBI to explore their constructive talent in the field of writing, it was decided to introduce SEBI's Maulik Hindi Pustak Lekhan Yojana. So this Yojana, it was organized to encourage the SEBI staff members that they explore their constructive talent in the field of writing. So this particular Yojana, it was introduced, and in this particular Yojana, the staff members, they were encouraged to publish the piece of writing in the form of books originally written by them in Hindi on the topics related to the securities market. So it was said that SEBI staff members, they should write something in Hindi on the topics related to the securities market, and for this purpose, this Yojana, it was launched. Now next is information technology. Now technology is a key enabler for the internal functioning of SEBI. Now SEBI has implemented a share portal, which is shared hub for all resources to digitally transform the organization of SEBI. So we have to remember that this share portal has been implemented by SEBI with regard to digital transformation of its organization. Now what are the main components of this share portal of SEBI? So they include scores, that is SEBI's complaint redress system. So we have already seen much about this redress system. Next is e-registration, which is concerned with online registration of intermediaries. Next is electronic workflows. So all the workflows, they should work in an electronic manner. So all the filings that have to be done with regard to public issues, rights issues, etc., they should be through an online system, and for this purpose, this electronic workflows component is there. Next is case management system. Now there are different cases in which SEBI is undertaking investigation. Some of the cases, they are under litigation. So proper record has to be maintained for them, and for this purpose, this case management system of share portal is useful. Next is ERP, that is Enterprise Resource Planning. So this Enterprise Resource Planning suite, which covers human resource management, finance, budget, employees, etc., they are all carried out through this ERP suite, which is a part of share portal. So this share portal is a very wide portal covering different aspects. Now let's take a look at some of the MCQs which can be framed out of this topic. Presently in Indian markets, currency derivatives, they are traded on BSE, NSE, MSCI, or all of the above. So this we have seen that currency derivatives, they are traded on all of these. So the right answer is going to be option number D, all of the above. Next question. Dash and dash are two benchmark indices in Indian commodity derivatives market. Options are MCX Comdex and NCDX Dhanya, MCX Dhanya and NCDX Comdex, MCX Comdex and NCDX Crude, or none of the above. So this we have seen that MCX Comdex and NCDX Dhanya, they are the two benchmark indices in the Indian commodity derivatives market. So the answer is going to be option number A. Next question. Stock exchanges are granted recognition for their operations in the securities market by SEBI under. Options are SEBI Act 1992, SCRA Act 1956, Capital Issues Control Act 1947, SEBI Stock Market Regulations. So this we have seen that this recognition is granted under SCRA Act 1956. So the answer will be option number B. So friends, these are the answers. So friends, this was all about the SEBI Annual Report 2017-18. So we have learned a lot about the different aspects of this particular report, and more or less I would say this was a revision of all the important things which we have already learned about the SEBI and the securities market. And there are certain other technical stuffs which we have deliberately skipped because they are not relevant at this point of time for the examination. Thank you.